A group of explorers sailed across the South Atlantic Ocean, heading toward a mysterious, uncharted island. Among them was David, a weather officer assigned by the government to study the island's unusual climate patterns. He was to spend an entire year there, collecting meteorological data before returning. Supplies for a full year, food, tools, and essentials, were prepared and loaded onto the ship. After days at sea, the team finally reached the island. It was barren, desolate, with no signs of wildlife. The only structures were a small house and a lighthouse, where David would reside. The previous weather officer, Robert, had spent a year there before him, but now his duty was over. As the team explored the house, they were shocked. Robert's belongings were scattered everywhere, yet there was no sign of him. Curious, David and the captain headed to the lighthouse. They found it sealed off with sharp, jagged planks, as if someone didn't want anyone to enter. Despite knocking, there was no response. Finally, they forced the gate open and discovered a man named Gruner. When asked about Robert, Gruner said that Robert had gone to the sea and never returned. David and the captain were stunned. The captain offered David a chance to return, but he refused. The reward for an accurate weather report could be significant. Before leaving, the captain handed David a gun and warned him to be careful, promising to return in a year. Alone, David began settling into the house. While exploring, he found Robert's diary. It contained cryptic notes about the island and sketches of strange creatures, but much of it was incomplete. One page had a photo of Robert's wife. Exhausted, David fell asleep after reading. The next morning, he began collecting weather data. Near the sea, he noticed oddly arranged stones and shells in strange patterns, which he assumed Gruner had made. Through his binoculars, David spotted another figure with Gruner at the lighthouse, but it vanished instantly. That night, while working, there was a knock at the door. As he approached with a lamp, he heard inhuman sounds and saw a grotesque hand reaching under the gate. Terrified, he ran to the basement. The creature entered the house, searching for him. David watched through a crack as it lunged toward him. To survive, he stabbed its eye, and the creature screeched and fled. He realized that Robert's diary had been truthful. The island hid unimaginable horrors. The next morning, David found strange footprints leading to the sea. He understood why Gruner had barricaded the lighthouse. Knowing the creature could return, he reinforced his house with wood and sharp spikes and set books and papers ablaze to scare it. He discovered an old box inside containing a gun and bullets, giving him hope. As night fell, David armed himself and waited in a corner. Soon, multiple creatures emerged from the sea, attacking the house. He fired, killing some, but many remained. He set the remaining books on fire, and the creatures retreated into the ocean. The next morning, David saw that his house had been destroyed by the fire. With no safe shelter, he had to move to the lighthouse. He hid among rocks near it, watching for Gruner. When Gruner appeared, a creature attacked David, but he managed to control it. The creature was Gruner's pet, trained since it was rescued from a fishing net. Gruner demanded that David stay in the lighthouse and help manage the creatures. David had no choice. Days passed. David grew close to the female creature, naming her Anarius, and began understanding her intelligence and emotions. The creature's attacks lessened as the weather changed, but Gruner warned that they would return. One night, a lapse in vigilance led the creatures to nearly overwhelm David and Gruner. They barely escaped to the top of the lighthouse, where Gruner was injured. Sunlight drove the creatures back to the sea. Time passed, and David and Anarius formed a bond, though Gruner continued his harsh treatment. One day, Anarius discovered a hidden boat, prompting David to ask Gruner about it. Gruner revealed that previous survivors had attempted to escape via boat, but had been killed by the creatures. The wreck contained explosives that David could use to defend the lighthouse. Over the next few days, David donned a diving suit and retrieved explosives from the sunken ship, narrowly surviving encounters with the creatures underwater. Together, he and Gruner set explosive traps around the lighthouse, preparing for the creatures' next attack. Winter arrived, and the creatures' attacks temporarily stopped, allowing David and Gruner a brief reprieve. David's cleverness with Anarius allowed them to set a trap. When the creatures returned, drawn by Anarius's cries, they were funneled toward the explosives. David detonated the first layer, killing many, and then the second, leaving the remaining creatures gravely injured. Both he and Gruner were knocked unconscious by the blast. The next morning, David awoke to find Anarius missing, though the surviving creatures were being subdued by Gruner. He noticed a necklace on one, realizing the creatures were intelligent and had families. David understood the true cost of their struggle, the deaths of families and children in a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, David discovered Gruner's secret. He was the original officer, Robert. He had changed his identity years ago to remain on the island. The revelation crushed David's hope of escaping, as he realized Gruner would never let anyone leave the island. Despite the oppression, David and Anarius grew closer, forming a connection that transcended fear. Gruner's dominance continued, but David learned to fight the creatures, defend the lighthouse, and protect Anarius. Together, they survived attacks, navigated the dangers of the island, and confronted the brutal realities of isolation, power, and trust. Eventually, David devised plans to manipulate the creatures and control their movements using explosives and clever tactics. Winter brought a temporary lull in attacks, giving him time to strategize further. Over time, David's skill and understanding of the creatures in the island allowed him to survive, though he realized full escape might never be possible. By now, David had accepted that the island, its creatures, and Gruner's harsh rule were his reality. Yet he also realized he could influence events, protect Anarius, and perhaps in small ways bring justice to the misunderstood creatures. The island had transformed him. From a weather officer collecting data into a cunning, resilient survivor navigating a world of monsters, secrets, and twisted loyalties.